Hello, 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 and welcome to A Girl, a Guy, and a Buffy podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm Charles Swint.
Hey, and I'm your other co-host, Kate Balzer.
Yay, yay. We're back for part two. This is so exciting. So we're doing a little two-parter here for you this season. So if you were here last week, we've been talking about Buffy's relationships, and you know, all of her tragic and relationships and things like that. For those of you who are just joining us, if for some reason this is the first episode that like showed up in your feed, we are two friends who have been watching Buffy from the very, very beginning, since it first aired, and we are doing a new look at the show through a modern day lens. We are not a rewatch podcast. We are full of spoilery goodness, and we talk about the show as a whole, and we pick a theme for the season, and we talk about the show through that theme as our big bad of the season. And so this season's big bad is romantic relationships, and so we're talking about that in the first part of our season. And this is part two of our discussion of Buffy's relationships and her romantic relationships.
And just as a reminder, the question that we asked last week that we're continuing to discuss this week is, does Buffy have tragic taste in men?
Yes. And a reminder, we are spoiling everything, and we usually stick to Buffy, but we are also talking about stuff that happens on Angel, and sometimes in the comics, but since Kate doesn't like the comics, it's not really canon, so we avoid those. Um, but we will mention some of that as well. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. So let's get into it.
So that leads us then into Riley,
I
which,
mean,
oh, sorry, go
yay.
ahead. No,
Sorry,
I was just gonna say it's so funny that, okay, first off, I love the fact that their quote unquote meet cute was her dropping a book on his head.
right.
Perfect. But I actually, even though like Willow was with Oz at the time, and then she has her horrible breakup with him. I always thought initially Willow and Riley had so much chemistry. I
Hmm.
wanted them to get together. I mean, I'm so glad she ended up with Tara, and I love that relationship, and I'm glad it happened. But like, as far as Riley goes, I was like, oh, you should have gone with Willow. So much more compatible.
In terms of like, even in terms of like on-screen chemistry and like
Yeah.
bantering, I felt like Allison Hannigan and Mark Lucas had more chemistry together
Yes.
than Mark and Sarah. Like it
I,
just felt like it, and Sarah has chemistry with everybody. Like
yes. I
so it
mean,
was weird that
she had chemistry with a quote unquote robot, April.
right. Right. God, that scene was amazing. I
It was
loved
so
that
good.
scene. Oh, so beautiful. Yeah, it's just weird that it doesn't quite hold well
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Um, and I think and I will say, like, to its credit, I think they do this sort of lovely job about giving her this nice normal guy and
Yeah.
building this and again, because it writes, trauma for drama's sake or whatever, and
Yeah.
they give you all of this like nice good stuff and it's great, and then like hush the reveal of him being in the initiative and all of that stuff. So then what you've done is that you've built this like safety nest, and again, you've given her a boyfriend who listens to her, who wants to know more about her, who's really engaged in everything that she's saying, and it's like, oh, I want to listen and learn everything about you. I want to create a safe space for you. I want to do all of this stuff for you. And then it's like, oh, but you've been lying to me the entire time about who you are, even though I've been lying to you too. So that's fine. We had to keep those secrets. So that's fair, right? And then you come together and you find out. But then once that happens, then the relationship is never the same. And
Yeah.
it's not because, oh, we've grown closer because of the secret, maybe for like an episode or two,
Right.
like maybe we did, and it's like, oh, this is cool. But then it's like, but then you can't handle it. Then you've become intimidated by who she really is, by the
Right.
truth of who she is. And then your ego is bruised, and you start lashing out, and you start behaving differently. And I think and again, I think this is one of those things where I think Riley ends the relationship for both of them
Hmm.
without telling her.
Yes, I agree.
And when he tells Xander, oh, well, she's not in love with me, I think that's the moment that he breaks up the relationship, but again, not man enough to sit down
Yeah.
and have a conversation with her and be like, hey, maybe it's me. I don't feel like we're in the same place in this relationship.
Yeah.
And maybe it's best that we go our separate ways. But instead, he continues the relationship and then goes and cheats on her.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I think, I definitely have sympathy for Riley because he goes through
Sure.
his own situation, when he finds out like what Maggie's up to and then finds out he's been drugged and chipped this whole time. But so, I get it. Like that's going to mess with your mind and that he had this whole career path and then that got thrown off as well and he was, kind of in this place after season 4 trying to figure out who he was, where the direction of his life was going and all he was doing was hanging on using a relationship to give his life meaning
Hmm.
that at a time where the other person in the relationship had less and less time for that because she had way more she had bigger fish to fry.
Hmm.
So I totally understand that. I have a lot of, sympathy for Riley. And, I think with their relationship and with like Angel and Spike, it's just two people bad at communicating that have things happen to them. And I think it's like normal badness. It's
Hmm.
not like the, you know, tragic love, manipulative boyfriend on the beginning and then the toxic relationship with Spike sort of situation. It's sort of that's probably
Right.
her most normal moment. Go ahead. Do you have something about
Yeah, no, I was just thinking because I remember I was listening to something and maybe I don't remember if it was into Every Generation where they talk about this or something that I heard. But there was like an interview with Mark
right?
that was saying that in his conversations with Joss, it was very much like, hey, we're bringing you in, all this other stuff. People
Yeah.
aren't gonna like you.
Yeah. It was
Like,
from that.
yeah, like everything that, you know, that's just happened with Angel and all of that, that it's this big love. You're the rebound guy, and people are not gonna like you. So don't feel bad. It's not that you're not doing a good job at what you're doing. It's just that we've set this up in such a way that you can't be
Yeah.
that guy. And again, why say that? B, like, why tell somebody that? Like, that doesn't make any sense. B, why would you do that? Like, why wouldn't you like try to write a character that people could root for this couple to get together?
Yeah.
Like, why would you intentionally write him so that he can't be that guy?
It's a good point. I mean, I can understand warning him that like, oh, there are massive Buffy Angel fans. Like this may be a challenge for you to enter.
Hmm.
That I get like that kind of warning. But you're right. The other half of it is, well, yeah, then why are you bringing him in?
Right. Why not just, or why not be like, this might be an uphill battle, but it's an
Right.
uphill battle that we want to win. And I feel
Yeah.
like they never invested that kind of thing. They were like, they knew he was like in and out.
Yeah. I
Like,
agree.
and I don't know how much, you know, I don't know how much of that was pre-planned or whatever, how long he was supposed to be there, or not, but it felt like a disservice to that actor,
Yeah.
and
I
to
would
the
agree.
character
I would
itself. Like,
agree.
you never really, I mean, you didn't give him much to do, and like the stuff that you gave him to do was kind of like weak sauce.
There's a moment, believe it's in season 5 when yeah, I think when they're imploding, and she's like, I have opened up myself up to you in ways I never have. I've given you my all, and if that's not good enough, and I'm like, okay, that must have happened off screen because like, when did that happen? I was like, it's a nice speech,
Right.
and I don't mean to say that like Buffy's fooling herself. I just mean like we literally as watchers of the show
Hmm.
never really saw that. I don't feel like we ever saw moments where like we got to see the depth of their relationship develop.
Hmm.
Like again, it's a lot of trauma bonding.
Yeah, I mean, they've got this thing that they do. I mean, they spend an entire. I mean, I think a lot of it too is this is the first time that, which was also kind of problematic. This was the first time that Buffy could really have sex.
Yes.
And so, like, they spent a lot of time having sex.
Right.
Like, that was, I mean, that was a big part of their relationship. I think for Buffy, though, I think from her point of view, I think she is being as open as she knows how to be. Like, she's like, yes, I'm a slayer, and this is who I am, and this is the person that I am, and I'm strong, and I can do these things. And yes, like it's fun hanging out with you, and I'm attracted to you. And oh yeah, let's sneak off together, and like let's, oh, and I want to kiss you. And like I'm being very like girly and vulnerable, and I shouldn't say girly and vulnerable. I'm being very vulnerable around you,
Right.
and sort of exposing my heart to you, and being like, yeah, I do like you, and like, oh, it's fun, and let's do all these things, which again, and like being able to like go the whole way through all of that um without incident. And so I feel like maybe from that point of view, she feels like, yeah, I'm in a relationship with you, and like this is good, and I'm being forthright about all these things, and I'm not keeping secrets from you.
Yeah, that's valid. And he gets to be there like all the time. He's part of the gang.
Right.
They get to go like in the, hang out at the beach and do those like quote
Yeah.
unquote normal things. So yeah,
And
I can see that.
everyone likes you, and you're hanging out with my friends, where it's like with Angel, like they were kind of like, we don't really like, we put up with him because he helps us fight, but we don't
Right.
really like him
Right.
because he's a vampire and he's dangerous. But like they genuinely like Riley. They like hanging out with
Yeah.
him. So
Yeah.
but I get what you're saying though, that like there's
Yeah.
there's never a lot of like big moments where it's like, oh, Riley, I'm so, and it's a lot of times her trying to, and maybe that's part of it too, is it's a lot of times her trying to uplift him so that
Yeah.
he doesn't feel bad about himself all the time.
Well, particularly in season 5. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's part of it too. He's in such a place where he's spiraling and he's trying to hold on to her and kind of, I mean, there's some similarities there to Angel and that he's trying to make her his life, like give
Hmm.
his life meaning. And I do think she excites him in a way that no one ever has before.
Hmm.
When he talks about like in when they are imploding and he talks about his skin buzzing and he's never felt like this before. I definitely see that and believe that. But I think that's also where it comes into they'll unless he ever gets to the point where he understands this is a calling for her and the mission will come first. It's never anything she can step back from, retire from.
Right.
Even as a military person who has a mission, but you can always leave.
Hmm.
This is not like you're trapped for life, nor like she's pretty much guaranteed a short life.
Right.
And that's not necessarily true for him. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand he's in a very dangerous career and he very much could have it, be killed. But it's not in the same way that her existence is.
That's her only out. Her only
Correct.
out from that is dying, where you could like
Correct.
retire and go off and live on your little Iowa farm and then call it a day.
Right. Which is why I think because he never got that, they were never going to work out. I
Hmm.
mean, and she may not have fully brought him along either, because for whatever reason, I think she got used to the fact that everyone in her life understood that.
Hmm.
Like they understood that point. So she didn't have to explain it to Willow. She, obviously she didn't have to explain it to Giles. She didn't have to explain it to Xander. I mean, her mom fully doesn't get it, but she's in a better place of understanding
Hmm.
than Riley, I think. And obviously it's a different type of relationship, so that impacts it. But I think because of that, they were always destined to fall apart. And which is why I think when he comes back, and as you were with this somewhat Mary Sue of a wife, although I really enjoyed that actress. I like
Hmm.
her when she ever appears, and I think she did a great job of kind of being that Mary Sue, but not being too much. Like
Right.
she also seemed like a human, like you understood why Riley fell for her, but you also understand why they work. It's like I don't mean this as an insult, but she's kind of like Buffy light.
Yeah. No, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it's the elements that he really liked in Buffy is in I can't think of his wife's name. Um
Sam.
Sam, thank you. Think is in Sam, but she doesn't have the mission. She doesn't have the calling. Like the two of them are doing this job together, but they can get out at any time.
Right. And yeah. And I think, and he says to Buffy, like when they're having these fights and stuff like that,
Yeah.
he's like, "You're not letting me in, you're pushing me out." And as we're getting like as they're breaking up like in season 5 and stuff like that, it's like, yeah, I'm keeping you out because I can't tell you what's really going on. We've got all this stuff going on with Glory. We've got Dawn being the key and all this. This
Yeah.
is information that I cannot share with you because it's only going to make things so much worse if I tell you,
Yeah.
and it's going to put you in danger. So yeah, I have to keep you out. And to your point about like it's about the mission. Like there's something that I have to do that is more important than anything else in the world, which is saving the world, like keeping the world, keeping everybody on the planet alive to the best of my ability is kind of the thing that I'm sent here to do. And
Yeah.
that takes precedent over everything, including you, dude. And I
Yeah.
can't let you in on everything, but I am letting you in on as much as I can. And if and so that and it wasn't something that he could handle. It wasn't something and it wasn't something that he wanted in that relationship. And so and that's okay. And so it's so again, have the conversation and be like, "Hey, I get it. There are things that you can't tell me. There are things that you can't share with me." And I thought that I would be okay with that, but I'm really not. And it's really and this really isn't working for me. And I don't think that you can love me the way that I want to be loved. And that's not you, that's me. And so I need to walk away for my sake. But nope, you don't do any of that. You just sit and mope and
Yeah.
sullenly go off and get
Yeah.
suck jobs from vampires.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. He very much handles it poorly.
Yeah.
Um, and then to end with an ultimatum. I mean, I can understand like
Right.
relationships are, very rarely is like a relationship one person's fault, like for,
Right.
the problems in it. So in this relationship, I definitely see it's both of them. But yeah, again, the guy's a jerk in breaking up with her. Like,
Yeah.
you don't be like, you have to decide now. I was like, and then, oh, don't get me started on Xander's speech
Xander
and
needs
that
to go
she runs
sit
after. I
down.
was like,
Ugh,
mm-mm,
I hated
no,
that so much. I
so
hated that
much.
so much. She didn't need to run after him at
No,
all.
no,
And Xander doesn't even know what he's talking about. Once
no,
again, Xander, like, you know, inserting himself into a situation that he has, you know,
no business.
no business. Dipping in the Kool-Aid and don't know the flavor. Like, just out there.
He may see things, but he's like seeing half the picture in this
Right,
case.
which is why he lost that eye, because he can
Yeah.
only see half of what's going on.
Oh, damn.
He can only
Okay.
see it from his point of view.
Exactly. Exactly. And it pissed me off too because I always felt like, Xander, like we could call you out for some stuff, how you're with Anya. And then it even annoyed me actually even more as like beautiful as the speeches and as well as he does it when he gives his own speech to Anya. And I was like, I love this speech. And that's like, it's a great counterpoint to Buffy and Riley where like Xander's like, I better tell her how I feel. But I'm also like, you can't also just give nice speeches.
Right,
You got to
exactly.
put in some more work,
You have to put
Xander.
in the work, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, I need to tell her how I feel." But like and she does tell him. Like I think she tells him all the time that because that's what brings up the whole thing in the first place is that like in this most like innocuous moment when they're just hanging out and she just, goes by and she's like, "Love you." And it's so innocuous and it's not like this big romantic moment. It's just like a Tuesday.
Buffy to Riley or
Yeah,
Anya to Zane? But
Buffy
okay.
to
Yeah.
Riley, where Riley goes, oh, she doesn't she doesn't really love me, I think,
Oh, she says it to him
yeah, like because
after he
she's
says,
leaving
"Gotcha."
Xander's basement and she's just
Right.
like passing by and it's just like love,
Yeah.
it feels like a very, which to me is like that's when you want to hear it on a casual, you know, Tuesday
Yeah.
in your friend's parents' basement.
Yeah. 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 How do you feel about his return and As You Were and that whole thing and the fact that it like propels her to end her toxic relationship with Spike?
It's I get it. I get why we do this. And I think it's a good story to advice. Here's the thing that I'm a little I get it, but it also kind of doesn't work for me. Like the
Hmm.
fact that Riley catches them in bed together,
Hmm.
I feel like that reaction was so like, I don't know, it was weird. I mean, I get it. Like he doesn't, I don't know.
Well, I feel like Riley is judging her for having sex with a soulless vampire, and he doesn't know he's right. It's a toxic relationship, but he doesn't actually understand why it is, and he's judging her for like the wrong reason.
Right. I, but but there's no reaction to it. Like that's the thing is that like his reaction to it is so minimal
Hmm.
that I feel like I get it. You've got this wife, it's fine but it hadn't been that long.
Oh, you think he should have actually had a
I
bigger
th
reaction?
Yeah, I think there should have been maybe a slightly
Oh,
larger reaction to he's so like stoned about everything. Like he's like she's upset that she's been discovered and he's like, yeah, so I'm here about this thing and it's very I guess, he's on a mission. I just think
oh, I
he,
interpret it actually as a good thing. It means he has moved on and he just appreciates and loves her for who she is and who she used to be to him. So
right.
I actually see it as like,
I mean, he doesn't have to be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, I don't think I get that he's moved on. I understand that. I just think that it's weird that he doesn't have any reaction to it, basically. Like, it feels like to me like because he even said, yeah, I don't know. Like, he says to her, there's, you know, he's like, I don't get it, but whatever. I don't know. It's just weird. It feels a little underplayed to me. Um,
oh,
But
yeah, that never,
I don't know if I want it but I don't think like a big huge blow up is necessarily the right direction for that either.
yeah, I
I guess
never,
maybe it's just like the subtlety of like surprise. Like when he finds them, like I don't remember seeing like any sort of like, oh, like you're in bed with Spike. Like that's weird. Okay, listen, we don't have to like I just wanted some sort of acknowledgement of like, oh, this is a surprise to me. As opposed to when he comes in, they get caught. She's freaked out. Spike's like, yeah, whatever, because that's the moment I think he always wanted. But then there's zero reaction from Riley. And I would think that if I've walked in, I listen. I have walked in on people. I have been walked in on. There's always a little bit of shock and surprise from everyone's point of view. So I
yeah,
just think that it's weird that he doesn't, that there's just no like, he, not that he has to be angry about it or anything like that, but I think he would be surprised that Buffy is sleeping with Spike because that's not what he would expect from her.
yeah. I mean, I think he is. I don't, it's, been a little bit since I watched it. I don't remember ever feeling like I wanted more from his reaction. Um, yeah, I just,
It's been a while since I've seen the episode. I would,
that doesn't really register. I feel like he does react, but then he sort of pulls it together to focus on like why he's there. Um,
And maybe I'm just forgetting that he does that, but just in my
Yeah.
recollection of it, I never get any sort of like sense of surprise. It's all just I come in and it's all very business, almost as if he expected to find her there.
Well,
Um,
then there's the fan theory that Riley was setting Spike up and knew all along.
that knew that it was Spike all along.
That, yeah, and that he set him up as the doctor.
Oh,
So that would play into that would play into the fan theory
yeah, that's true.
if he had a
Um,
lack of reaction. No, I was referring more to the fact that like that conversation at the end before he and Sam take off, that is like you'll always be who you are, Buffy, and you may be going through a hard time, but the core of you hasn't changed. And it's basically Riley that like has seen everything because obviously she's been keeping the relationship with Spike a secret. Um, and kind of gives her that push to end it. I
mhm.
always go back and forth. I think it sort of depends on where I am in headspace. The first time I watched it, I was like, I was there for it. Then I'd rewatch it and I'd be like, not Riley. Screw you, Riley. You're the last person who should be like, I'm like pissed off that it's Riley that does it for her. And I was like, you have, and then I'll be like, watch another time and I'm like, yeah, okay, I see it. So I go back and forth on whether I like the fact that it's Riley and his
Yeah,
to her.
I guess it kind of gives him a little bit. Well, it's kind of it makes sense though. It totally makes sense that it is him because it is sort of a redemptive um
Yeah.
reflection for him because and maybe that's why it works and maybe that's why they played it that way because when she found him with a vampire, she went off the handle, but they were dating at
Well,
the
yeah.
time. And so, fair
And
point, totally like logical reaction. Whereas he is married to someone else and doing all this other stuff. And so when he finds her, like he has no room to talk. He has no room to judge
true.
her on that because he did the exact same thing, except they were dating when it happened. These are two like single individuals who are making a consensual choice and he's saying like and maybe he's sort of reflecting to her like you're in a bad time, that's what happened to me, like I was in a bad place, which is why I
Yeah.
did the thing that I did, so I get why you're doing it. um and just remember that that's not who you are, like your bad choice now doesn't define
Yeah.
who you are at the core. So I don't mind that it's him because it is a nice sort of parallel to
Right.
how it all ended. And so like the fact that it's the thing that gets her back moving again um feels like a nice storytelling device and a nice little bookend to that um in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um, like I said, it really kind of depends where I am in my headspace. I can I can go one way or the other. I think sometimes I'm bugged that it's Riley, not because I don't think he handles that moment well, because I'm not sure how I guess partly because it felt like he never really fully understood her.
Mhm.
And so it's not a case of like she's just in a bad place. Like she's in this level of bad place that like in the context of their world, most people will never understand. So I don't mean to also like always say she's nobody can understand her life because what she goes through is so unique. I just think it was more like Riley specifically. I totally agree with what you're saying.
Mhm.
Like I totally agree with that side of it. I understand that and I think that's exactly where they're coming from. I think my negative side comes from that fact of like of him fully not being able to fully understand her world and
Mhm.
he doesn't know everything that's going on. And I don't think he does come off again, I'd have to like rewatch for like the details. I'm only remembering like general terms. I don't think he comes off as judgy. I think that is a nice final scene between them.
Yeah.
But I think that's really the element of it for me is but I'm always like I'm such a Buffy stan and Buffy defender, so I may be
Right.
also like a little too biased.
Well, he's definitely not judgy about it. That's for sure. Like
No.
there's definitely no judgment for it. I think like
I'm not sure who I would want. I'm not saying like I was
Yeah,
like,
like
this
is there
person should be the one to like make Buffy realize. I do like that it was someone
I think it's
did it.
also easier to make it Riley, right? So
Yes,
that it's
agreed.
someone outside of the group
Yes, agreed.
because no one else can and maybe that's why it works so well and maybe it's because maybe he didn't understand her before,
Maybe he
but
does
maybe he
now.
does now after after going through all that stuff because he says
Yeah.
it took me, although again in the grand scheme of things
He got over her very fast.
it's not that long of a time, but he's like it took me a while to get over you. I was like, but you're married now and it's like a year later, like so you got over her real quick because you dated this girl and got married in a year, so it didn't take you that long to get
Yeah.
over it. But you know, it took him a while. I think it took him a while to like work through some of those things and understand. So maybe now he understands her more and
Yeah.
understands his role and all of it, which is why he can't judge her. Which is why he can't be like, well, you know, where which is exactly what Xander should do, but doesn't ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he finds out, like his reaction is so uncalled for.
Oh
His
my God.
reaction,
Mr.
I
Judgy
so want him to
McJudgerson.
get, I wanted him to get punched in the face so badly. I was like, you deserve, like, if any time Xander deserves to get punched the F out, it's now. Like this moment right here, and it should be Anya. And Anya should have every right to punch him down and like beat him so hard because he deserves it so. I don't
Yeah.
condone violence, but in that moment, I
I
feel
know
like,
both Anya and Buffy deserve to punch Xander. I'm with
yeah,
you. Not don't want to condone violence, but it would be very
it
satisfying.
would have been so satisfying. I mean, she yells at him. Anya gets the yell. Yeah, I want justice for Anya because I think she should have been so much should have been allowed so much more anger
Yeah. Yes.
than than she was able to
Agreed.
fill it
Um,
out. Anyway, we're
yeah, no,
talking
I
about
agree.
Buffy
Well,
people.
and that being said, I'm glad they put a button on the Buffy Riley relationship.
hmm It gave
I
it
do
closure.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, some closure.
So
Um,
great.
okay, so now
Um,
we're doing the Buffy side of the Spike Buffy relationship.
oh,
We've already discussed it from Spike's perspective. Okay, one thing I have to say on this.
okay.
Okay. Because I feel like in commentaries from I feel like some of the comments either in interviews or on the DVD commentaries are a little like all over the place from Joss Whedon. And I'm just like, look, you set Buffy and Spike up to eventually have some sort of romantic relationship, and you cannot tell me otherwise. The text clearly is there.
hmm
Like, whether she's like she doesn't have she can love Spike, and we'll get to that discussion without it being the same as how she felt for Angel. So like stop saying like if I don't feel if she doesn't feel for somebody like that she felt for Angel, it's not real love. Like no. And so like as we said, the like chemistry we saw between them when they were magically married or engaged in something blue, and then the fact that like when she goes to him as the Buffy bot and chooses to reward him for for protecting Dawn with a kiss on the lips.
hmm
Like, come on, people.
Preach, preach. Well,
And like there were always like developing I mean, we know there's sexual attraction, but I think there was always like slight development of romantic feelings. I mean, when he has those like moments of goodness, quote unquote, in season 5, like that works on her. Like she
yeah,
sees that. She takes that in and and then obviously they really are kind of friends in the beginning of season 6 before she, he screws it up by basically realizing he can hit her and thinks, that she came and tells her she came back wrong. I'm like, dude, you are so dumb.
right. He played
Like
that all
really.
wrong. He
And
really
then of
did.
course, like she's in this mental place now where it's like, oh God, what does that mean? And decides to like launch their toxic relationship during that house fight. But
So
And
good.
then, and then you go into season 7, and she's like, when Willow and her are talking about relationships, and Buffy's like, why does everyone think I'm still in love with Spike? Freudian slip much.
Right. Because you are, Blanche. You are.
Exactly. So anyway, like there was text there. Like we're not pulling something out of nothing.
No, yeah, absolutely. They are in love. And again, like the ending where
Yeah.
she's like, I love you. No, you don't, but thanks for saying it,
Right.
kind of like diminishes everything that's happened because honestly, here's the thing. She loves him. She loves him for the man that he is, and not for the monster. And she has said that, and he calls it like, you know, in season 5, he says it when he's like,
Mhm.
I know I'm a monster, but you treat me like a man.
Yes.
And she does.
Hmm.
she she looks at, and I think she does it in a way, and again, circumstances are very different. The circumstances are very different with versus Angel, because there isn't this like child to protect. There isn't like
Yeah.
that sort of stake, the that's on the line. There's not that sort of situation going on where the danger is outside of, because the only time, like really the only way we get Buffy kind of like Angel being by Buffy's side or whatever is season 1.
Hmm.
And and he can't really do anything against the master. Like he doesn't really help out that way. Season 2, he is the problem.
Hmm.
And then season 3, he's broken up with her. So like at the end, they're not even together. They're
Right.
like separated. So we don't see him sort of standing by her side in the way that we see Spike standing by her side. And again, very different circumstances because Buffy's going through a lot of life stuff.
Yeah.
And so, you know, to have some, again, and Spike being in the best way that he knows how to be the boyfriend that she needs, who shows up even when she doesn't want him there,
Hmm.
but is always there for her, even just to be in the quiet moments and in the silent moments and just to sit with her, and gives her the space that she needs. And all of those moments, he is always there for her, even when she's like, please go away. He's like, I can't because I know that and like, also because I don't want to, because,
Yeah.
I'm, stalkering, I'm a stalker, but, um,
Yeah. Well, with Spike, I think it's half I'm a caretaker and half I'm a obsessive stalker.
right. Those lines get very blurry for him.
Yes. Yes. Well, and
It's
it
very misery. It's very
yeah. Well, and like in season 6, it starts off more like in that caretaker sit in the quiet moments, and then everything changes when he realizes he can hit her. So
right.
that means something's different about her, and his need to hang on to her when it becomes sexual, which I think, going back to what we said with Buffy's interpretation of her short relationship with Parker, it's sort of the same way. I think in a lot of ways, Spike equates sex with love and romance.
Hmm.
And so when that happens, he thinks, oh, great, we're in a relationship now, like romantic
Right.
relationship. And then he does everything wrong to hold on to her because he knows he's going to lose her.
Right.
Um, and I think part of it too is I mean, she's in such a dark moment, and has so much self-loathing. Um, and she has all this weight on her that she doesn't have the energy to deal with. But then you also factor in that she's, has all these negative past relationships that burden um how she sees relationships.
Well, I think this idea that this idea of love and doing all of this other stuff, and it's like, well, oh, I've got to be in love, and again, this very like heteronormative,
Yeah.
very puritanical like trope of, oh, well, we have to be in love to have sex, and again, as
Right.
opposed to just being like, I'm, and she says this, and she's like, I'm using you to make myself feel better.
Right.
And he's like, well, I'm not really complaining, which is true. He's really not. But I think she realizes even more acutely that like it really does mean more to him than it does to her. She
Yes.
knows that. And so like
Yes.
it's not, so she is doing like I think that moment is probably one of the most mature moments that Buffy has when it comes to
Yes.
her relationships, where she was like, I know I'm using you to make myself feel better, and I can't do that to you. It's not fair to you.
Right. And it's also
Um,
not fair to myself. It's
yeah,
not healthy. I'm not making the right choices for myself. I'm not in the right headspace.
right. And I care enough about you to have this conversation with you, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
and to have this thing, which no one else has ever done, which is what I wish other people would have given me, which is
Yeah.
the truth.
Right.
And I think that's a level of care and love for a person that
Hmm.
really is like, even when you were into relationship, no matter what it is, I think how we choose to enter and end relationships shows a lot about how we feel about people.
Yeah.
And so I think like her ending it that way was really, I mean, was the most kind and loving thing that she could do.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's such a great moment um in her development as a person and being in relationships. The other aspect to that is, in spite of what she might think and what she might be telling herself and telling Spike, whether it's 100% or not, she trusted him. And that's
Hmm.
why when he sleeps with Anya, and again, why there were emotions involved, um, romantic feelings involved, even if it wasn't, in a healthy way, that when he sleeps with Anya and she sees it, she's heartbroken.
Yeah, it hurts.
And you can understand why he comes to her. Like if she had just been like disgusted, I think he would never have had, and also then Dawn hadn't come and said, like, you broke my sister's heart,
Yeah.
had that conversation, he might not have come and tried to push her.
Hmm.
Um, because he saw that as like his opening, like the door was open a crack to get back in.
Right.
And then
Because you do
obviously,
care, because you really do care.
right, right. But that obsessive stalker demon mentality doesn't let him understand the full picture.
Hmm.
And so obviously he takes it way too far because that's his mentality. And then that's that toxic, no means yes relationship they've had for months.
Right.
And it devolves into his attempt to sexually assault her because she is legitimately saying and means it.
Right. She's
No.
like, I've got to stop this. I just can't. And yeah. But then when we see them in season seven, I think, and again, it is a little, I mean, again, like so many of the relationship storylines and, for the pacing of it all, it is kind of rushed a little bit,
Yeah.
with the forgiveness of it all. But again, that's sort of the situation that they're in at this point, is that like something big is coming, all of this stuff is happening, and so I have to make a choice about how I'm choosing to interact with you and how I'm going to do this. And they have the conversation about what happened between them, and she's like, yeah, I don't ever really, she says it then fairly early on that like, I don't really trust you still because of what you've done. So like, I don't, you tried to rape me, dude. Like, this is not,
Yeah.
we're like in the first part of the season, it's like, I don't trust you. But then in the latter half of the season, she, at some point, and I don't know what that point is, she said, I need to put all of this behind me. And you know what? When push comes to shove and when things go wrong, I know this is a man that I can trust,
Yeah.
who will stand up despite everything, will stand by my side and be by my side and help me through this. And so I'm not sure where that happens, but she definitely does, because she fights so hard
Yeah.
the rest of the season to keep him around, even though everyone's like, he needs to go away, where he's like, I need to go away.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, you can't. I need you here.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, some of that might be a combination of her Slayer instincts
Hmm.
And like if the bad guy is using Spike and saying like everyone is instinct is to get him to leave. I think Buffy's always known like she's always had the opposite instinct in those moments and she's always right.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit of that, but I think it's also like if everyone else around her sort of wasn't adding to her burden and driving a wedge, like he isn't and he did this, you know, amazing thing and went and got his soul to be a better man for her, not just to be a better man, but to do it for
Right.
her. So like I can also see how that would like really spin your head for somebody you're already attracted to and have feelings for
Right.
and have been developing this like crazy relationship with over the last like, you know, 2.5 years at least when he got his chip, but had even known longer than that. So you have Willow who's like dealing with her own mess and is afraid to use her magic. And then you have Giles, like somebody who was so important in her life and such a mentor and such a, you know, father figure who abandons her and then is now telling her, "Hey, Buffy, you're it. You got to train these girls. You got to save the not only like Sunnydale but the world." I can see how she would start to rely on Spike.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, for sure. And I think it's important that I guess I'm curious as to what because I think it is a lot of the Giles pushing back because she does say, Giles is always like your feelings for Spike are um skewing your judgment on things. Like,
Right.
and it's like, well, are they, or is it just because I'm not doing the things that you want me to do or expect me to do? And
Right.
so because I'm not doing it the way that you want me to do, you think my judgment has been compromised.
Yes.
Um, and I think maybe that's when it starts, is when Giles is really like pushing in on it. And she's like, wait a minute, like I've kept him around and he's been super helpful. And he's like, and she tells Giles, he he can be a good man. I know he can be, but he can't be a good man if we keep treating him like he's a bad one.
Right.
And so maybe that's when it happens for her, is when she's getting all this pushback and she's like, we need more good guys around. He can be a good guy. And if you all stop treating him like one, maybe you would see it too. Maybe start treating him like, you know, the hero that he has. He's fought by your side many
Right.
times and like saved your lives before. Like, you got to give him that.
Yeah. Well, and there's no text to this, but I think a valid interpretation could also be like, Giles, you abandoned me.
Right.
And not only did Spike not abandon me, he went and did this like thing that no vampire has ever done, as far as we know. And like he did it for me. So I can understand how she would internalize that and start to rely on him more.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a huge deal. I mean, talk about
yeah,
like your grand gestures. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that kind of forget the rock. I don't know. Like if you like, forget the ring, like man, like if you I went and got a soul for you.
Yeah.
That I mean, and that's a huge deal. And I did something that I know is going to cause me so much pain and maybe not fully understanding it at the time, but being like, I'm about to do something that's going to cause me a lot of pain and it's going to be super uncomfortable for me, debilitatingly so. But I know in the end it will make me a better person and I'm doing it for you.
Yeah. Well, and
And then ultimately for himself,
yeah, oh yeah, for sure,
you know,
absolutely. But I think because he did the one thing he never thought he could do to Buffy
mhm.
or her in a way he never thought he could. That was definitely the driving factor. But back to the way everyone is with Spike and Buffy in season 7, how they're all like, you're relying on him too much and send him away. I mean, I definitely see their perspective. It's easier for us as outsiders to be like, we always know Buffy's right, you
Right.
know, keep him around. But I totally get where they're coming from in that regard, and I get where even the, how the potential slayers would see that and couldn't understand um how Buffy's decision to keep him around, while it might have been emotional, was not necessarily irrational based
No.
on everything she knew about him and her experience with him.
And also, what else was she gonna do? Like, when you're dealing with these like apocalyptic things and all of these other things are happening, you want, and she keeps saying, I need my strongest people. I need
Right, exactly. I was
strong
just gonna say
people
that.
around me. So like,
Yeah,
why would I not use everything in my arsenal
yeah,
available, even if that means I have to work with this person who like don't necessarily have a great relationship with, but God, he's one hell of a fighter. And
yeah.
that's what we need right now.
Well, and we know that's what Buffy does. She'll use what tools and resources she has available. Um, even if you're crossing into working with the enemy or working in a gray area.
And I mean, that was kind of their first thing was when
Yeah, I was
Angel
gonna say,
turned,
actually, it
like,
started with Spike.
yeah, when they had to fight against Angel, like
Right.
she made that, she made that compromise, um, and did it because it was in her best interest
Hmm.
to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I think it feels very much like their relationship is a relation. Just because you have a relationship of convenience doesn't mean that it's not a real relationship. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that there is not something very strong um and intimate about it.
Yeah.
Because it is an intimate relationship. There is feelings exchange. There's a physical intimacy and an emotional intimacy that occurs in this relationship. It's a true relationship. And they have feel he's in love with her for sure. She
Oh yeah.
definitely has feelings for him, very
Yeah.
strong feelings for him, and probably loves him and loves him in a way that works for them,
Yeah.
even though it's not like, you know, dulcet tones and, all of that stuff. It's not
Yeah.
like the hills are alive. Oh, like it's not that kind of love because
Yeah.
she's not that person anymore.
Yes.
And that's, and so I think as we grow and we change, and depending on what happens, you know, and you can debate whether, she was in love with him. She absolutely had feelings for him. She
Yeah.
absolutely, you know, cares very deeply about this person. And that's okay. She might not be like in love with him, but she loves him.
Absolutely.
Because you don't fight that hard to keep someone
No.
around that you don't care about.
Yeah, that you're like indifferent to.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah, very true. Um, well, and also we get stuck in this sense of, qualifying like what counts as real love or
right.
real romantic love. I think in pop culture, and
Hmm.
I I think part of why I find Spike and Buffy's relationship so much more fascinating um, as an adult than her and Angel is because of the complexity, and that it's not just, it doesn't fall into cliche or trope or um, it has more depth to it. Even in its toxicity and darkness, it's interesting to watch as a viewer and explore. I mean, in the end, do I want better for her than certainly what they had in season 6? Absolutely.
Sure.
Do I think that's why I like where it ends. They've both, reached this really beautiful place. There's been a lot of forgiveness on both sides. They share their love with each other in their own way, but they're both at a point, obviously technically we were not supposed to know that Spike was coming back on Angel, but they blew that one by sharing it too soon before the Chosen finale for those who watched live when it was on this UPN. But they both were in these moments where they'd reached a great place, but now they were gonna have the time to figure out who they were by themselves. Like,
Right.
and that's what I think is the right place to end for them at that moment.
Well, and to give them so many opportunities toward, or not so many, but to give them all those opportunities at the end to again be intimate with each other in a physical way that had nothing to do with sex,
Yes.
to counterbalance all of those times, which is just another like which shows us that she's gone from I don't trust you in the beginning of the season
Right.
to I trust you because I'm gonna lay here in your arms
Yeah.
because now I know that you won't hurt me ever again. Like that will never happen again. Because of who you are.
Right. And she asks both of the times.
Yeah.
Um,
She asks him. Yeah,
right.
she
Yeah, she invites
invites
him
him.
and then asks him like in the basement. Which I just think it's a great moment. It's a very conscientious choice.
Hmm. Again, we're getting back. So now we're starting to get to these moments of consent
Consent.
where it's like really happening between the two of
Yeah.
them because they need that
Right.
to understand each other. And they're like, and that built, and those moments of consent are rebuilding the trust
Yes.
between them. And so I'm
Yeah.
asking you to like, he's like, I'm going to lay out here. You know what I would really like is for you to lay here, especially after you've said this like really, really amazing thing about me that makes me feel so good about myself when I feel really, really kind of literally and physically put out and
Hmm.
put upon. Like that is really nice. And so yes, I would like for you to lay here because now I want the sort of physical equivalent to that verbal,
Yeah.
hug that you gave me.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think their moment of connecting and touch, which was obviously done on purpose, it has more shoot, now I forgot the word I was going to say, but is has more depth and more true connection than I think everybody who went and had sex. Even Willow and Kennedy, who are technically in like a relationship. Um, that moment says so much more about their relationship than if they had also had sex like everyone else was having in the episode.
yeah, and I feel like too, it's kind of the first time that they're like, well, not the first time, but it's the first time since, since the
Yes.
attempted rape that they are intimate again.
Yeah.
And
And in,
so
but in a way they had never been before.
yeah, in a new way, like this is a
Hmm.
new start to what could be. This is how it could have been
Hmm.
the entire time during season six had they been in like a better place, which
Right.
only goes to show that I think that just proves that this is a stronger relationship. This is a
I
relationship
totally
that has
agree.
more legs. And this is a person who understands me more and treats me like an equal.
Yeah.
And understands and can communicate those feelings to
Yes.
me in
Yes.
a way that Angel never could.
Right. I totally agree. Um, yeah, I absolutely agree. And also, we've said this before. I mean, if somebody gave you a speech like Spike gives to her in Touch, it's over. I'd be like, yes,
Panties dropped. Panties dropped. It's done.
it's such a great speech.
I'm
Oh
like, come over
God.
here, boy.
I know. It's so funny. And I feel like it's the grown up, like romantic moment. Like it's
Right.
not the like saccharine cliche romantic moment. It's the
Yeah.
I see you and I'm going to tell you, I know you're not perfect. I have seen you at your worst, but like it is the grown up, you know, romantic, the culmination at the end of, a more grown up romantic comedy kind of moment.
Right. It's
um,
such a great speech. It
yeah,
really
it
is.
really is.
Um, I'm like, man,
No,
to
and he
hear
does
that,
it so
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And she hears it. That's the other great part too. She
yeah.
hears it. Um, and it's a nice bookend to her speech to him
Hmm.
and Never Leave Me, I think. Where she's like, I've seen you fought back the darkness, and I've seen the man you've become.
Hmm.
Um, that they really get each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot there. I mean, I do think, like I said, earlier, like if the show had continued on, I would have wanted them to be separate and have the chance to grow up and, go out in the world. But I could see how they would come back together
Hmm.
after a few years of having that opportunity to grow on their own.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you look at Angel and Buffy in that same light, they need a lot of work.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That to me is not there the way it is for her and
Well,
Spike.
and I also think, like, I mean, I think it would take him so much long. I don't know. They would have to spend more time together because
Oh, for sure.
Angel doesn't get to see Buffy become the woman that she is growing
Yeah.
into, where Spike gets to see that growth and change. And
Right.
Angel always sees her as a child and treats
Yes.
her like that
Yes. Well,
for all of the time that they're together.
yeah, and I think it's the same way for Buffy. I mean, she kind of only sees him as that older romantic
Hmm.
boyfriend. She doesn't see what he's gone through, whereas like that's why he and Cordelia are sort of the
Right.
mirror pairing to Buffy and Spike. Like the
Hmm.
two of them go through the ups and downs and as friends, as then leading towards romance, and then of course all
Right.
falls
They
apart for
just blew
reasons
that.
we
They
now
blew that
understand much
storyline.
better. But yeah, those two relationships to me, I mean, they're a mirror of each other,
Yeah,
which is also
absolutely.
why I think Angel and Cordelia's relationship is so much more interesting.
Yeah, I would have, and quite frankly, it's interesting that I think Cordelia makes Angel a much more interesting person
Agreed, 100%.
because without her, he is not, I don't think that he is an interesting person at all.
Yeah,
He's very one note, and
right.
she brings out the dimensions in him,
Yes.
because he's very not nuanced at all.
Yeah. She treats him more holistically, whereas Buffy can only see him as, that
Right, the ultimate love.
all-consuming,
Right.
yeah, first love. Um, and Cordelia's like, dude, I've seen you be an idiot.
Right. I've seen you try to kill people.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and again, like, and that's, which is the other thing. Like, they do this whole thing where, like, oh, well, you know, he's killed people and he's done all this other stuff, but there's so much more sympathy for Angel than there is for Spike.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and and it's like, well, he's got the curse and all of that stuff. And it's like, well, Angel does all of these things because he is cursed and he is trying to atone for all of this stuff that
Right.
he's done in hopes of, again, like getting his soul back, or whatever, or getting his humanity back, through the prophecy and all of this other stuff. Whereas Spike is doing these things because of her. Like, I don't know if one is better than the other. They're both different. But I just feel like because Spike doesn't have a soul, but he still is like choosing to do good things even without his
Hmm.
soul. Where it's
Yeah.
like Angel only does good things because he has a soul. And as soon
Right.
as you take it away, he turns into this monster
Right.
every
Well,
time.
yes, and I think with Spike too, I mean, his drive to get the soul is Buffy, but I think once he has it, he realizes that um first off that he can't just like show up and be like, "Hey, I got my soul." Like
Right.
it helps mature him, I think more in the immediate aftermath than it certainly ever did Angel. Um and I think that's just partly because of who they were as humans and who their experiences have been or what their experiences have been over time. Changes how they deal with that soul.
Right.
Um, so it's like a catch-22. Would Spike have ever thought to go do that if Angel didn't have his? Probably not. But when he does he do a better job with it? Probably.
Yeah.
you know.
Um
Um, but I suppose that's a whole nother episode. Getting it, we could have
it
on souls and what that means in the Buffyverse.
could be a whole other thing. So,
Yeah,
does Buffy have
tragic
toxic
wasted men.
Toxic, tragic taste in men. Uh,
I think she has naive taste. I think by the end of season 7, she's grown up a lot.
sure, yeah. Um, I will say, yeah, I say that she does, but it's not her fault that she does. I think she's written to have bad taste in men, but I
Yes.
don't think that she herself necessarily has tragic taste in men. And actually, and like I said, relationships take time and practice
Yeah.
to get better at. I don't think anybody's really. I don't know people who are good in their first relationship. I don't
No.
know, you know.
No. It would have been very unrealistic if she was like this incredibly mature 16-year-old who,
Right,
could handle her relationship as if she was like 35.
right. So I think she gets better at it, and I
Yeah.
think even just like we said, even her choice in being with Spike is a better choice
Mhm.
than her previous ones.
Yeah, and I mean obviously they do that because those romantic entanglements bring the drama and, the worse off it is, the more interested, viewers are, and it pulls them in. But I do have to say it also like plays into, and I'm sure there are examples out there nowadays where this may have changed and it's being done better, but it sort of drives me nuts where you have like a strong woman, particularly a strong woman in like her career, and her romantic life is always a hot mess.
Right. She's
I
certainly
mean, it
not
makes a little
passing the
more sense
Bechdel
when
test.
Buffy's younger. Um, as we said, a 16-year-old is not going to have the emotional maturity and experience of an older woman. But yeah, I wish we could start to do that less and less. So there's ways to bring in drama in relationships without it being like, oh, a woman can be like awesome at her career. And in this case for Buffy, it's like her calling as a slayer, but always terrible at her relationships. I mean, that's a whole nother,
Right.
thing to get into, but I very much feel like that is the case with Buffy in a way it's not with the other female characters.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for this two-parter to discuss Buffy's romantic relationships. If you haven't already, definitely like and subscribe, and we would love it if you could rate and review us on your favorite podcast app as well. And if you have not already told everyone you've ever met about us, please do so. You letting other people know about how much you love this podcast and sharing it with them is really how we get new listeners, and we're so grateful for it. So definitely do that. And then if you're not already following us on social media, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at A Buffy Podcast, or you can shoot us an email, abuffypodcast@gmail.com. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.